So this is the goal, to create a glow bag that will hold 5 or 6 discs that I can go out and throw around at night. So let's talk about raw materials for a second. I use these bags that you get from the market when they deliver produce or frozen items. They're mostly made out of what feels like bubble wrap, but it also looks like it's got a lining that's aluminum foil. These are really easy to cut up and make flat pieces out of. I originally was thinking about using either aluminum foil or potentially those foil pans like you can use to cook a turkey in the oven or something, and decided not to use those because discs will rub up against them and tear them, and the bubble wrap stuff just seemed to last longer. The next thing you're going to need is some kind of black light strips to put inside your bag. These are strips that I found on Amazon. You get two 6.5-foot strips of black light LEDs, which have a cable that connects to a USB port on the end. I think it was like $15 or something like that. Nothing particularly fancy, and it seemed like a good idea. The next thing to think about is how you're going to attach all this stuff together. There's an age-old debate on what's better to use, duct tape or hot glue. I ended up using both. Pro tip: if you're a person that has a long beard or long hair, be sure to wrap it up or put a rubber band around it or something and keep it out of the way. If you make a mistake with the duct tape, you're liable to lose a few hairs trying to get it out. If you're using hot glue, you may end up getting ready to have a trim that you weren't expecting to have. You're also going to need a bunch of cardboard. I started out using regular cardboard that was pretty thick. If you have cardboard laying around and it's not thick, you might consider doing it double thickness. The next thing we need to talk about is how you're going to set up the inside of the bag. I thought I would be smart and just pull out the old interior separator and use that as a template for how I wanted to put the new interior in. When I realized that the separator was rounded at the corners, that made me have to do an adjustment because I wasn't going to mess with that. So what I did was I cut a piece of cardboard that was the same width but about an inch longer. That allowed me the extra space I needed. This is the old separator laying against the finished product, and you can see that I made it about an inch wider, and that turned out to be just enough. As you can see here with the measuring tape, the total length of the inside of the bag is about 11 inches. Up to this point, I had been using hot glue to attach the pieces of the bag to the cardboard that I had cut out. That worked great until I ran out of hot glue. Lesson learned: make sure you have lots of hot glue on hand or lots of duct tape. And now a quick word about cutting and folding cardboard. I know a lot of people haven't done this before, and so you don't realize that there's actually an art to it. When you want to fold cardboard, the best thing to do is try to draw a line on the reverse side of the direction you want it to fold, and make a cut that goes halfway through the thickness of the cardboard with an X-Acto knife. This way, when you fold it from the other direction, you get a nice clean fold. Your goal at this point is to get the center core piece created. This should be a piece of cardboard that's about 21 inches wide and is scored 6.5 inches in from each end so that you could fold it into this U-shaped. All we're doing at this point is finishing lining the separator section so that it will reflect all of the UV light back up towards the discs. At this point I realized I had made a small mistake in that the ends of the storage compartment would still be black like the fabric of the bag. So what I needed to do was to make a couple of flaps that would go at the ends of the separator and reflect the light back inside. Not a big deal and not particularly hard to do, but I realized I would have to make them about an inch longer so that I could wrap them underneath the separator section and tape them down there. I also had to cut a score on the back so that I could fold the cardboard so they would have like a 1-inch long foot that I would tape underneath the separator. Here you can see what the entire separator looks like from the bottom when you've got all of the foil or whatever you're using glued down. The next step was really to now attach the light strips to the inside of the separator. At this point I had a big internal debate with myself. I originally thought that I wanted to create separators that would go between the discs, and these separators would be wrapped in foil to reflect the light around. However, I realized that these separators would need a foot to be able to be taped and held in place in the bag. And if I was going to do that, it would make it very difficult to wrap the light strips back and forth across the bag. At this point, I have to give credit to my wife for this next part. She saw me struggling and asked what was going on, and when I explained that I was trying to figure out how to deal with keeping the discs separated, she had the idea of using these plastic trays that we get chicken in. I could just slide them in between the discs in the bag, and they would allow the light to pass through perfectly, and they would let me be flexible in how the discs were lined up and how much space was allocated to each one. Since the bag is about 11 inches wide and the strips of lights are 6.5 feet long, I calculated that if I kept the strips about an inch or so apart, I would be able to go back and forth and make 3 runs with each of the light strips. It worked out pretty well. One thing that's nice about these light strips is they come with an adhesive backing, so it's literally peel off the cover and stick them right on the bag. That's great, but the challenge is you only get one chance to do it right. You also have to figure out what you're going to do at the end of the bag, because you have to make a turn and come back and go in the other direction. This is messy because you have the adhesive backing that's sticking out open, and you can't cut the strips because it only has a power connection on one end. And speaking of the connection, it's pretty flimsy. I decided to wrap a bunch of duct tape around it where the USB cable connects to the light strips to reinforce it. So this is what the final inside segment looks like. It's pretty straightforward. The next step was to fold it up and see how well it fit in the bag. As you can see in this image, it actually worked out pretty good. It's still a little bit tight, but it's nothing that I can't force. One thing that may not be completely obvious here is where the power banks are. If you look at this image, you can see the cables are hanging over the top side of the interior of the bag. I left a little bit of room between the disc separator and the bag so that I could store the power banks inside there and tuck the cables in there in case it was raining or damp out. They would be in the most protected part. It also makes it pretty easy to just reach in and plug the cables into the power banks when I need to turn it on, or unplug them when I need to turn it off. So here's what the final product looks like when the lights are turned on, the discs are in the bag, and the separators are in place. It provides enough light to charge all of the discs at the same time, and certainly because it's version 2 glow plastic, it should last a long time. So thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Hope you're able to make a bag on your own and that this has been some way helpful. If it is, leave me a note. Or better yet, if you want to help me grow the sport, send me a disc. I have a habit of giving discs to new players that I meet on the course, but with all the new people I'm seeing, I'm starting to run out. You can private message me here or hit me up on Facebook via Messenger, and I'd be happy to send you my contact information. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, new or used works, but I typically only give people putters and mids as beginner discs. So that's the best thing to send. Thanks for sticking around until the bitter end, and I hope I can see you one night out on the course.